Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of A Game in a Chair brought to you by the American Civil War Gaming Club. My name is Blake, I am the host here on this show. If you want to check out our club, go to acwgc.net. You'll find out a lot of information there and we hope you decide to join in the future. In this episode today, I'm going to go beyond the pixels once more to investigate a unit history which has always caught my attention every time I play this game. We're going to be looking at Campaign Antietam, and specifically the Battle of Antietam. And you've probably noticed this unit if you've ever played this game, because it's one of the very few units that has exactly 1,000 men. It is located right there on the map. That is the 14th Connecticut. They are part of the 2nd Brigade of French's Division in the 2nd Corps. So in this episode, let's take a closer look at the 14th Connecticut, learn about their history, and discover how it is that they ended up at the Battle of Antietam. In 1861, the rebellion was supposed to be over in just 90 days, but the Union defeat at Bull Run changed all that. The government called for 500,000 additional men, and people began to wonder whether the war might not be over as quickly as they originally thought. In the New England state of Connecticut, 13 regiments were authorized to fill their quota of 13,000 men to join the Union armies. These units, the 1st to 13th Connecticut, were quickly filled up and left Connecticut over the coming months. Each of these units would have its own unique story to tell, but for now, we are only going to look at that unit which wasn't immediately authorized, the 14th Connecticut. In April of 1862, with victories in the West coming quickly at Shiloh and Fort Donelson, and McClellan assuring all of his eventual success in Virginia, the War Department ceased active enlistments. Connecticut's last regiment to be authorized, the 13th Connecticut, had left the state in March of 1862. But on May 21st, the War Department decided to authorize a new Camp of Instruction to be gathered at Annapolis, Maryland. The Connecticut governor, William Buckingham, called for a new regiment to be raised and asked for 3-year enlistments or, for the duration, volunteers. The unit largely formed from volunteers out of the Hartford area, but also from New Haven County in the southern part of the state. But the regiment formed slowly as the war seemed to be about over, and the prospect of serving in a camp of instruction, whatever that meant, enticed few. But that changed as Union reverses began to multiply in June, and a new call went out for 300,000 more men to join the federal armies. The 14th Connecticut, already partially formed, was finally completed with the rush of new volunteers brought on by Lincoln's call for more men. On August 22nd, the regiment fielded 1,013 men. They were armed with Springfield rifles, though 2 companies were armed with Sharps rifles. The regiment departed by boat across Long Island Sound to begin their trip to Washington, D.C. on August 25th, 1862. We left camp with bands playing and flags flying, marching to the dock in a column of 4s, remembered one veteran. As we moved, the crowd increased, and it became so dense that we could hardly make progress. The commander of the 14th Connecticut was Colonel Dwight Morris. Morris was born in Litchfield, Connecticut in 1817, and was a state politician and lawyer before the war. His second in command was Lieutenant Colonel Sanford Perkins. On September 7th, the regiment was brigaded with 2 other new regiments, responding to Lincoln's call for 300,000 more, the 108th New York and the 130th Pennsylvania. These 3 regiments would form a new brigade and would be led by Colonel Dwight Morris. The command of the 14th Connecticut would fall to Perkins, who was previously a captain in the 4th Connecticut, and was promoted and brought over to the 14th Connecticut when that unit was formed in 1862. It would be Perkins who would do much of the drilling and training with this unit, as the tide of war began to push them into Maryland and towards Antietam Creek. The 14th Connecticut, the 108th New York, and the 130th Pennsylvania, Morris's brigade, would be part of French's division of the 2nd Corps at the coming Battle of Antietam. The regiment moved with its brigade to Antietam Creek and arrived at that place on September 16th. On September 17th, the regiment was ordered to move over Antietam Creek with the rest of French's division. Sumner's entire corps was moving to join the fighting, then raging around the West Woods and soon along the sunken road. Morris's brigade would eventually end up in the second line of the division as it began an attack against the sunken road. French had placed Brigadier General Max Weber's brigade in the first line as they attacked the road about 9 a.m. The 14th Connecticut would advance on the right of Morris's brigade and in the rear of the 1st Delaware from Weber's brigade. Moving into battle for the first time, the inexperienced Connecticuters fired a volley into the backs of the 1st Delaware and forced them to lie down between the two lines until the friendly firing stopped. Soon Weber's brigade was repulsed and Morris's brigade sent forward to attack the sunken road. The other two regiments in the brigade would attack on the left of the 14th Connecticut, but the brigade could not dislodge the Confederates in the sunken road. The 14th Connecticut soon took a position in support of Richardson's division as it took up the attack next. Firing on the sunken road while lying down and using a slight ridge for cover near the Roulette Farm, the regiment would help wear down the defenders to their front. Eventually, the Confederate line would break and flee to the south from the sunken road, but the 14th Connecticut and Morris's brigade were not ordered to pursue them, and their battle came to a close. The regiment would lose 137 men at the Battle of Antietam, and for them, the war was just beginning. They would go on to fight in 33 more engagements while with the Army of the Potomac. At Gettysburg, the regiment would capture multiple enemy flags and take part in the repulse of Pickett's charge on July 3rd. The regiment would fight until the end of the war and was with Grant at Appomattox. They would be mustered out of the service in May of 1865, and on June 3rd, the regiment returned to Connecticut after nearly 3 years of war. Altogether, the 14th Connecticut would lose 1,256 men during its time in service. Lieutenant Colonel Sanford Perkins, who led the regiment at the Battle of Antietam, would be wounded at Fredericksburg and would retire from the Army soon after. Colonel Dwight Morris, who originally led the regiment and then the brigade at the Battle of Antietam, would only fight in that singular battle. He did not perform well and he would be relieved before the Battle of Fredericksburg, and then he returned to civilian life. He would die in Bridgeport, Connecticut in 1894. That same year, the state of Connecticut authorized funds for the creation of monuments to be built honoring the state volunteers who fought at the newly created national battlefields of Antietam and Gettysburg. On October 11, 1895, the remaining veterans of the 14th Connecticut gathered at Antietam to dedicate the monument to their regiment. 14th Connecticut veteran Lieutenant Julius Knowlton gave the address that day to his fellow veterans. We are here to mark the spot where the 14th Regiment, an undrilled body of 1,000 Connecticut soldiers, just 3 weeks from their firesides, met first the foe, and met them bravely. So that coming generations may be led to venerate the flag and incited to deeds of valor in its defense, we dedicate this monument to the 14th Connecticut Volunteers. All right, so that is the story with the 14th Connecticut at the Battle of Antietam. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed this little backstory. I've always been intrigued by the 14th Connecticut every time I see them in this battle. They are rated E, which seems appropriate given their greenness. I'm not too sure why they're armed with breech-loading rifles. I did find that 2 companies were armed with these guns, but the other companies were armed with the traditional infield rifles. So the next time you play the Battle of Antietam and you see the 14th Connecticut with its 1,000 men, you'll know the story beyond the pixels. Alright everyone, thank you for watching. I always do appreciate it. Be sure to like this video and also subscribe. When you do that, you'll get notifications when future videos are released. and you can stay up to date with all things American Civil War Gaming Club. Alright everybody, until the next video, remember, just keep gaming.